Thanks for giving the introduction, and thanks for also giving us the opportunity to share a bit our perspective here. So whilst bringing up my screen, maybe a quick introduction of myself. So Pieter Gillis, I'm a senior consultant at Deloitte in our Brussels office, where I'm mainly focused on manufacturing strategy and smart operations, predominantly, I would say, in pharma and biopharma. And I'm quite pleased to have Grégoire with me today as well. So I don't know, Grégoire, if you quickly want to give an introduction of yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Peter. So hi all. Also from my end, Rosemary, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for providing us the opportunity to walk through this topic, which is, in my opinion, a very interesting one. So I'm part of Takeda now for 10 years. And I am in a department called Manufacturing Science and a global role. So a more scientific background, but you will see throughout the presentation why this digital transformation matters and why you have to have a good mix of profiles.
Yep. All right. So session of today, I would say mainly two parts. So I'll start with giving, I would say, a short introduction on how we see, let's say, biomanufacturing evolving towards the future. What is the impact of digital, and what is also the impact it will have on the skills and the roles that will be required going forward. And then Grégoire will make it a bit more specific, also looking at some of the use cases that they are implementing in their Lessines site today. And then, as Rosemary mentioned, we'll still have a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to speak up then or use the chat function, I would say. Now, just to illustrate first, before diving into some of the content, why digital is such a hot topic. I think quite a good illustration of that is somewhat the work that Essentia and Bio.be specifically has been doing in that work or in that space, I would say. So Grégoire and I were very fortunate to, let's say, launch a digital working group back in September with a number of companies that you actually see here to discuss effectively, let's say, the impact of digital, how will the future look like, but also to somewhat get a better idea of where Belgium is in terms of digital maturity in this whole space. So you'll actually see some of the elements and some of the discussions we had there coming back in the presentation here. And I would say stay tuned if you want to hear more about this working group. Now, obviously, the facility of the future, biomanufacturing of the future, why are a lot of companies looking into those? Well, if we take a step back, there are obviously a number of challenges that the overall industry is facing. And I won't go, let's say, in all the details here, but I think one important one, if we look, for example, at process complexity, I think back 10, 20 years ago, I would say the market was really dominated by small molecules. But what we see, I would say, really the last years is an increasing rise of biologics. And then also more specifically, I think about cell and gene therapies, that is increasing more and more. And if you translate that into some of the requirements and the complexity that is linked with manufacturing, it's one of, let's say, the big challenges that pharma companies are facing in their manufacturing space. If you make there the link also a bit with the commercial side, obviously developing those treatments, those manufacturing processes requires a lot of effort, a lot of costs. So what we're also seeing from a public perspective as well is increasing pressures, I would say, on pricing. And that is actually also translating into, I would say, an increasing focus of biopharma companies on bringing down their manufacturing costs. And then I would say there are still two other topics. I think about the whole remote health, digital health, and obviously regulators that are becoming quite focused on getting additional information, getting additional documentation from biopharma companies. So high level, a couple of challenges, but actually if you look at those, digital can provide, at least to a certain extent, a solution to address these challenges. The difficulty, however, is if we somewhat look at where life sciences is in terms of digital maturity compared to some of the other industries, we see that they're still quite lagging. If you think about technology, for example, by nature, those companies are quite digitally advanced. But yeah, if you look at life sciences, it's more in the neighborhood of oil and gas, chemicals. So there's still some growth there and actually quite some opportunity. And that's, I think, why Grégoire and I are both so excited to talk about this topic because of all the opportunities that digital brings in this space. So that's a bit the why behind the story. Now, obviously, you could wonder, how is the facility of the future going to look like? And there is, let's say, not a single answer there. But what we do see is that basically the entire factory is going to be impacted by a number of technologies that you see here on the bottom. So if we look at, you see the different plant functions here, basically all of them are going to be impacted, and I'm not going to go through each of them in detail. But if I maybe zoom in on production, for example, what we see there is that a lot of biopharma companies are looking into yield optimization. They're trying to capture data from sensors to really get a better understanding of their processes, and to also, let's say, with the use of machine learning, try to improve the yield of that process. And that's not only happening, I would say, in an offline manner. It's also happening real time, meaning that they're capturing real time the data, they're generating the insights, and they're actually proactively steering the outcome of the process. Maybe a second example, and that's a challenge that we often see, is that biomanufacturing companies still tend to work in silos. What you see is you have your QC lab, you have your warehouse, you have your manufacturing, your shop floor, but they're not really speaking to each other. And from a scheduling and a planning point of view, what we're now seeing with the aid of digital technologies is that sites are bringing together all that information centrally, and based on that, actually try to optimize the end-to-end value chain. So no longer in one silo, but actually trying to improve the speed to the patients, trying to also reduce some of the inventory that they have, and at the same time try to maximize also the asset utilization. So that just to sketch a bit, let's say, how we look at the facility of the future. Now, again, it will look different from site to site, from company to company, but at least I hope it gives some inspiration of where the industry is going to. So the next topic we actually want to deep dive into is obviously what are the types of skills that you need to transition towards such a facility. And I think we talked about the example of production, and I mentioned we need to capture data, we need to translate that into insights, and then we also need to feed that back into our process. So the first, I would say, bucket that you see here is what we call the IT and OT skills. It's all about having knowledge on sensors. How do I capture the data from those sensors? How do I centralize it? How do I do it in a secure way? And how do I also, for example, cope with the introduction of robotics, something that we typically see in packaging activities. So that's the first bucket. You capture that data, but with that data, you need to generate some insights, and that's where we look at the analytics skills. So there, it's everything from data engineering, data analytics, and data science. And then obviously generating the insights is one thing, but you obviously also need to show it in an intuitive way to end users. So those, I would say, are more the digital focused skills. But as Grégoire mentioned, it's not only about those digital skills. The focus and the need for people with solid scientific background, with solid understanding of processes is still very important in this whole transformation. We're still looking for people with GXP experience, knowledge about how do I calibrate a certain asset, how do I validate it. So that remains a very important part. And then obviously the last one, but I'm not going to go into any details there, is obviously still the soft skills next to all the more, I would say, hard skills that we mentioned here. So that is a bit the overview. Now we do want to make this session a bit interactive as well. And that's why we also have a short Slido. So what you can actually do is either, I would say, take your phone, or you could browse to slido.com and actually enter the code. And what we want to know from you is actually, to somewhat give your perspective on what you think, or the extent that you think Belgian biopharma companies feel that they have sufficient digital skills. So I think, Grégoire, you are probably launching the poll. I think we have 4 answers there, ranging from, I believe, 10% to something more complete.
Correct. So multiple choice, 10, 33, 50, or 80%.
Maybe I'll stay on this page to make sure that everyone has the link and the details.
So we currently have 3 answers, 4. They're coming in.
All right, and then I'm going to switch to Slido as well. I think you'll need to share the results, actually, Grégoire.
I have 5. Let me take a print screen, put it in the Teams, so you will all see it there. So 5 is where we're at. Send the screen the replies. So we have 40% thinking it's 10, 40% 33, and 20% thinks it's 50.
Interesting results. So let me actually go back to the slides. So the question that you just answered is exactly one that we asked to the participants of our digital working group. So the answer was actually 10%. So only 10% of the participants considered itself to have sufficient digital skills. And I think, again, it's a testimony to the fact that there's a lot of opportunities still left in this space, and a lot of companies are also still looking into building that knowledge base and that skill set within their company. Because that's also one of, I would say, the main challenges that we see. If we look at companies trying to build their workforce of the future, the main challenge that they have is actually that there's a mismatch between the current skills that they have in their organization and the skills that they will need in the future. So that's, I would say, one part of the story. But the other part of the story is still, we talked here, or we're looking here more at the digital angle. But again, the traditional scientific knowledge, process understanding is still very much in demand. And that's also what you see here with some of the roles that companies are struggling with to actually fill. You still see the need for people in MSET, bioprocess engineers, but as well also the operators on the shop floor. So that remains, I would say, a big challenge as well. And then if you think about the combination with digital, you can imagine that biopharma companies are looking actively to improve, let's say, the knowledge and the skills of their workforce. So that just to sketch a bit, let's say, more the skills. Now, I do, for the last part of this presentation, I do quickly want to zoom in on what are now some of the specific roles that companies are looking for to transition towards that facility of the future. And what are those roles today, but also perhaps already more going forward. So if you look at today here on the left-hand side, you still see, let's say, the people, as I mentioned, with process understanding, and then we're looking at the plant teams, going from your plant manager to your quality lead. They are all involved in this transformation, for sure. But then you're basically also looking at a whole range of profiles that is more focused towards digital, I would say. And then I'm not going to name all of them, and the ones that you see here are just an illustration of some of these roles. But obviously, data scientists are a hot topic, but actually data engineers are more in demand than data scientists. And then there are still some other roles. You have a solution architect, and then maybe more the combination with the business angle. That's where we're looking at product owners, for example, but also Scrum Masters. So that's already the roles that we see today within biopharma companies. Now, if we look 5-10 years from now, a lot of these initiatives will mature over time. So they'll need to continue, let's say, to think about new digital use cases, but also the existing ones need to be maintained and continuously improved. And that's why we're also seeing some, let's say, new roles here. And I'm actually also, for the sake of time, going to directly zoom in on the digital twin engineer, because that also, I would say, nicely links back to what we discussed around everything on yield optimization. So a digital twin engineer, and that's the last part here. A digital twin engineer is really, I would say, the guru, the master that knows everything about your process. And he looks at it from different angles, I would say. First of all, more from a process development point of view. So what we're looking at there is the creation of digital twins. Now, it might sound a bit a buzzword, but I think Grégoire will demystify a bit the concept of a digital twin in his presentation. But basically, what it means, it's a digital copy of a physical process. And that digital twin engineer can actually play with some of the process parameters to optimize basically the quality of the end-to-end process. And he can run those simulations, let's say, in a digital way and not necessarily through the use of experiments. So that's one angle. Obviously, that digital twin engineer can also leverage existing commercial processes to define, I would say, insights for new products being launched, new processes being tested out. And then there's also the second part, which is more linked to the commercial manufacturing side. And there we're really linking back with the yield optimization that we discussed. It's really about using machine learning to proactively steer the outcome of your process. Imagine you have a real-time alert notifying you that the quality of your process is deviating. Typically, what you want from your digital twin engineer is that he designs those machine learning algorithms to automatically, let's say, update a certain parameter or alert an operator on the shop floor and to take basically an action and to make sure that in the end the quality is where it needs to be. And then if we link that also with some of the skills that we discussed and some of the tools, basically what you see is that digital twin engineer obviously has a strong knowledge, scientific background, a strong knowledge of the process, but he's also fully aware of, let's say, the full data pipeline all the way from capturing your data generating insights from that data, but also I would say displaying and visualizing some of that data towards the end user, either on the shop floor or more, I would say, in an overarching role. I think about your plant manager as well. So that just to sketch a bit, where is biopharma going? What are some of the roles? And also a deep dive in this digital twin engineer. I think the main message is here that the opportunity or the opportunities are quite huge for digital, but also for people that are interested in digital in biopharma. But that doesn't mean, of course, that let's say the traditional scientific background is no longer relevant. No, I think actually the opposite is quite true. And I think Grégoire, he will actually go further on that topic as well.
I will. Thank you, Peter. So I will share the screen instead. So you should be able to see the presentation again. Hope that's correct. Oops. Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So thanks for the introduction, Peter, on the topic. I will try and provide a little bit more insights on how this translates in actual industry, pharmaceutical industry. So first, I'd like to give a little bit explanation about Takeda, and also a pop quiz question. Then I'll walk a little bit through the operating model. So to link it back to what Peter mentioned also in the implementation team, so how we structure this into Takeda Lessine site, and then also provide a little bit more example specifically on the digital twins of a project that we've run through, and where I'll also explain how we developed this and also the why. So first of all, Takeda. I guess it's quite known company. We are located in Belgium, in Lessine and in Zaventem. Takeda worldwide is top 10 pharma company. It has a very long history, if you see it on the slide here. So since 1781. So and Takeda, as you can read it here, patient focus, values based. We do put a lot of focus on R&D and innovation also in our company, and in the end to bring better health and a brighter future for the patients. So that's Takeda worldwide. So now Takeda Lessine. I would like to ask a question, and also again in the Slido, which I will open there. So what do you think? What do you think the age of the Lessine site is? So now I have activated the poll. So feel free to go in the Slido again and provide the answer. So it's the same answers as before. So 10, 33, 50, or 80. So have a guess. We have one reply, 33 years. Second one, 10 years. 33 is leading. We had 4 replies now. We have 5, and I think before we were also at 5. So I will provide a correct answer, which is actually 50 years. So Takeda Lessine is actually already existing since 1972. There is a little bit of a side note to that. So for those that are familiar with the region in Lessine, we have Baxter as a manufacturing facility. Baxter still exists in Lessine. We are now actually sharing the campus with them. So Baxter got split into Baxalta, which got acquired by Shire, and which 2 years ago in 2019 was acquired by Takeda. So with that, the manufacturing facility, although being only 2 years part of Takeda, we're already there since 50 years. So we do have quite some age maybe, but still we are very eager into this innovation field and into this digital transformation. Takeda in Belgium, we have been active since 1835, so also quite a long history already. So not like Takeda worldwide 1781, but still quite impressive. We are top 5 employer in the pharmaceutical industry in Belgium, so with over 1,200 employees. We have, as I mentioned before, an office in Zaventem and a manufacturing facility in Lessines. So quite an impressive footprint in Lessines. We are the 3rd biggest site of the group there, and we do have operation 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. I did put a video here. It's video on YouTube, which explains also the Takeda manufacturing site in Lessines, Belgium. And lastly, I don't think it's in my opinion quite important actually, the ambitious goals we do have in terms of sustainability. So we do have several pillars of our breakthrough objectives. Digital transformation is one of them. I don't want to forget also carbon neutrality. And so we do play we have a big ambition in this carbon neutrality, implementing a long-term strategy. And I'm also happy to say that Lessines is actually acting as a precursor in this ambition. So we have very ambitious projects ongoing as we speak in Lessines. So that aside, for Takeda, we do have the topic here on digital transformation. So to come to a digital transformation, you do need a kind of governance. Peter explained in his slides that you have a digital implementation team, and in the end, you will walk through future roles. And setting up this structure as we have here, this organization, is also important to make sure that all the departments are connected in this journey, and that we can move on to this future status actually. So what we have here in this organization is basically in Lessines site, have one person that is leading a kind of board and that reports to the site manager. And in every department, be it engineering, manufacturing science or quality, so everyone is involved, there is a digital representative that can have this digital affinity, but also has the knowledge of his field in department. So that's very important to have this mix of roles. And when you look at the characteristics, well, we are having a centralized team which is responsible for the digital strategy. We have the digital capabilities that are enhanced through the centralization, and then we can spread it back out to the different departments. And with this team also, we are establishing a digital roadmap so that it's clear for every department where we're going to and how it is aligned to the site strategy. And last but not least, I mean, we are one site, Takeda Lessines, and we have Zaventem, but we also have a much bigger network outside of Belgium. So within Takeda, we do also need a strong coordination across the departments and across the Takeda network to either prioritize, learn from each other, and of also budgeting perspective. So when I walk just a little bit deeper in this digital board, and I'm actually presenting the slides on behalf of here the head of digital and innovation, so Michael Brion, who is actually leading this board. You see here also the team membership, again, very diverse. So it's a cross-functional group going from all the different departments. HR, I did not mention before, but that's also quite an important one. Why? Well, Peter also quickly touched base on this. In terms of skills, you have a lot of different skills that are needed. You need the process-wise skills. You need the pure IT skills, let's say. You need those that can translate those two fields. But then you also need soft skills, and you need to work together with the people. So despite the fact that digital may sound a little bit technical, it's still people-centric. So you need to engage with the people to drive this digital transformation forward. And through people engagement, well, you may also want to reconvert, upskill, or train them further in this world to increase the digital capabilities internally. So what we have here, again, digital board in the scene. It's a cross-functional team. We're integrating the expertise across all the scene department, and to ensure we have an aligned vision, strategy, and roadmap. So you have the different team members with a frequency of meeting, and what we are also doing. So based on the representation from the different departments, this is what we can split into smaller work groups to what we call an agile work group. So to deploy the projects in a certain manner. And before, I also mentioned, quite important to network within Takeda. External network also critical, and therefore this bio.be working group that Peter explained also is quite crucial also to understand what the other people in the industry are working on, and again, sharing experience, leveraging the best practices, learn from each other's mistakes to really go into this digital transformation altogether. And now a little bit more in a specific use case, so the digital twin. So we have deployed a proof of concept in the scene, so trying out this digital technology. So why, how, and maybe also what. So digital twin, what? So as you can see here, it's replacing laboratory development. So we did a digital twin, a process digital twin on a chromatography step, so purification step in the scene. So chromatography, you separate the API, let's say, from impurities based on several conditions. So it's quite a known technique, I would say. And in the classical process development, you would run X amount of experiments, and you would then make analysis of those experiments and draw a conclusion. A little bit more recent, but still already maybe a bit aging. It's using quality by design approach, is where you do design of experiment. So you do multiple variables in a matrix environment, and you test a combination of different factors, again, to try and come out with a conclusion. And then you have this approach, digital twin, which is actually using mechanistic modeling. So you go back to the fundamental concept of chromatography in our case to see, okay, how does chromatography work, and the separation, how does it work? And you combine this with limited amount of experiments to then actually feed this into a machine to construct a model. And based on the model, you simulate all kinds of conditions. So here we did that for the chromatography step. And we did that with a cross-functional team. Well, you could say, okay, why are you doing this? There is nothing fundamentally changing. Well, there is a big change to the fact that the digital model can then run the simulations at a much higher speed than doing the process development lab activities. So lab activity, we are approximately thinking 1 day per experiment. You will see later on with the model, we were quickly able to make over 1,000 simulations with a high accuracy, actually. So these are the main benefits. On the cost reduction, product quality is not impacted. So we also ensure this, or we are even able to improve the product quality based on the model, and faster implementation is also so a huge gain of time. As you can see here, also in the improvements, a reduction of development activities. We are continuously learning about the process. So this feeds back into process understanding. And this is why, again, you still need your process engineers, that they are able to understand what is happening and integrate this into our other systems. And by understanding the process a little bit more, you reduce the risk of OS. And then, it's a high improvement of the productivity. So I mentioned here, it's a cross-functional team. We did have manufacturing science people, we had digitally skilled people, we had QC, because we also still have QC that is doing the testing, so those are quite critical also. And we also had the support of a external vendor. And so this is here the mechanistical model where we have here, well, an observed data. So we fed it with some historical data. We had 4 lab scale experiments, so you need to calibrate your model for sure. And based on the experiments, you then establish the model where you can simulate some other conditions. As you can see here, this is then a first simulation with the same conditions, and then you can play a little bit around. So we were mentioning, okay, what is the impact of the conductivity of the load? What is the impact of the flow rate? What is the impact of the wash flow rate? And you can really, play around with the model. Here, for example, we have a third where we did have a higher load conductivity. So you see a higher peak here, but no real influence on this part here. And that's how we worked in this process, where we are in this proof of concept, and where, based on the successful experimentation that we had here, is really going down to next steps in full-scale implementation even now. So what this does reduces the time of development. So we are, if I'm not mistaken, we are at approximately 6 months of time reduction. So if you would think the model was able to run over 1,000 experiments in less than 1 week, I mentioned before it was 1 day per experiment. So it's over 1,000 days. So I'm not even exaggerating when I'm saying the 6 month time reduction. It would be much more. But that's just a practical example. There are much more that can be discussed, and that will then be fed again through this digital core team, as I mentioned before. And so this operating model remains very important, but then here you are still working in a project-based mode. So that's a little bit, I would say, the presentation I had. So what I also discussed here. So these are all the different experiments that we can see with the simulation. So every data point is 1 experiment. So over 1,000 runs were done through the mechanistic model, and you can then analyze the data as you would before, but with only a fraction of time. So you see here, based on this, you can develop then your next steps. The conductivity first, the flow velocity at second. So that was a bit the presentation we had. Don't know if we do have any questions. Let me stop presenting, therefore I can see the slide again.
Merci bien. Alors là, j'ai envie de parler à l'Assemblée. Est-ce que vous avez des questions? Que rien n'est apparu sur le chat à l'heure actuelle, mais n'hésitez pas à lever, peut-être utiliser le petit icône pour lever la main et prendre la parole. Monsieur Bastien Lemisiou.
I don't have any specific question, but it was clear, and thank you for the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Bastien.
Ouais, j'avais peut-être une question à vous poser de manière générale, avec le fait de cette transformation numérique dans les entreprises. Qu'est-ce que vous pourriez conseiller à des candidats actuellement, je vais dire, qui recherchent un emploi et qui n'ont pas nécessairement été sensibilisés, je vais dire, à toutes ces technologies et cet environnement dans lequel ils vont arriver? Comment aborder la question quand ils répondent à des offres d'emploi? Est-ce que vous auriez des conseils à donner, des tuyaux?
Okay, Gash, do you want to take it, or shall I?
Yeah, so I mean, as we mentioned, the classical skills are still very important. They remain, very important. The digital skills will gain importance also. I think how you can best arm yourself. You have so many examples of digital transformation outside of the industry also that you are using. I mean, if you look at your smartphone, for example, how this evolved, and it seems so easy that we're using this. So we need a bit of this mindset. We need to ensure that why not in the industry also. Now it's for sure, if you look at the technologies, you will need training in addition. There is a whole learning ecosystem, I would say, that exists. You need to dig a little bit into this, but you definitely need some support in there. That would be coming either internal from the company where you would apply once you are onboarded, let's say, but you also have a ton of possibilities, outside of the company itself. That would be my.
Yeah, I think it was interesting, Rosemary. I think you mentioned it in the article for Le Soir, if I'm not mistaken. It's learning to learn, and it's the continuous learning. I think as piece of advice is indeed be curious, I would say, because the resources are definitely out there if you're willing to learn new digital skills. Whether it's on your own, I think Heroes Baby, you had a long list there with all the different trainings that are available, whether it's a very technical one, I'm just saying in Python or Java, or whether it's something else. I think the resources are there. Do you need to become an expert on each and every technology and skill? No, definitely not. But if you have that interest and you build somewhat that foundation, and you can actually, like Grégoire mentioned, combine it with also solid understanding of processes and potentially also mix it up with a scientific background, I think you have a very, very strong profile towards employers.
Ok, merci. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Oui. Ben oui, Monsieur Lemissio.
Do you usually organize like some formation for the digital skills? I mean, for example, you talk about like the employees need a strong, for example, scientific background, like, and to understand the processes. But do you organize some formation to learn how to use the different soft skills you need in the process, because there is so many different softwares you can use? So this is my question.
It's a great question. I think so. Obviously, and I'm happy to give the word afterwards to Rosemary. But obviously today we have Cefushim Vitalent. Now their focus might have not been on digital in the past, but that is definitely high on the agenda to include that in future trainings. And I would say, I don't know, Rosemary, if you can perhaps also share a bit more about the vision that there is on, let's say, implementing or including some of these digital skills in the formation.
Oui, tout à fait. Alors, à l'heure actuelle, pour se former dans tout ce qui est compétences digitales, on a un réseau de centres de compétences qui sont actifs. Alors, ce ne sont pas nécessairement les réseaux de centres de compétences actuellement actifs dans le biopharma et la chimie tels que Vitalent, Acta et Cefochim, comme l'a cité Peter, mais il y a une offre de formation qui est mise à disposition. Donc, il y a un site internet qui est développé par Numeria, sur lesquels vous pouvez prendre connaissance en fait d'une offre actuellement disponible. Il est clair qu'on est au tout début, je vais dire, de structurer cette offre de formation au niveau du territoire de la Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles. Voilà.
Ok, merci.
All right. If there's no further question. Let me maybe quickly pull up the slides again. To also make some advertisement, I would say, for our working group. So I mentioned in the beginning, stay tuned. And I only, let's say, highlighted a couple of items from the digital working group. But we'll actually go into much more detail. I think it's already next week. Yeah, next week we'll actually be organizing a webinar together with Bio.be to actually discuss, I would say, the outcome of the maturity assessment that we've done with the working group, but also again have some of the companies that participate or that participated, sharing some of the initiatives and use cases and innovations that they are currently implementing in their sites. So if you're interested, I would say definitely sign up through the website of Essentia. I don't know if there's anything else from your side, Rosemée, that you wanted to mention for today.
Oui, non, il n'y a rien de particulier. On a une dernière conférence qui a lieu en fin de journée, donc vers 16h. Donc, si vous avez envie de nous rejoindre. Si vous trouvez que cette conférence était intéressante, elle a été enregistrée, elle sera aussi mise à disposition. Donc, n'hésitez pas à en parler autour de vous pour permettre à d'autres personnes d'en prendre connaissance. Voilà.
We
Moi,
do have
je
a
peux remercier.
question here.
Oui.
I see one in the chat box. I have recently followed the formation of Python and AI. It's a formation of 2 weeks. What do you think? I'm also scientific research in the chemistry field. I am interested in jobs related to digitalization and data scientists. Do you think this formation is enough for such job opportunities? So in my opinion, I think it's a great start. And also going back to what Peter mentioned before, so be curious, learn to learn. The fact that you have this mix of scientific profile, but also this digital affinity, I would definitely encourage to continue like this. This is definitely the profile that we will be looking for, in my opinion. I don't know, Peter, if you want to add anything there.
Well, my first reflection would be it really depends what the job profile is. If you're specifically interested in data science or becoming a data scientist, maybe 2 weeks is a bit short, I would say. But again, like Grégoire mentioned, you have the background, scientific background, and specifically for data science, a lot of the concepts link back to fundamental mathematical skills, linear algebra. So I would say the learning curve for someone with that background is also a bit shorter than for someone with a different background. But overall, I would say it really depends from profile to profile. And I think just showing you're interested to learn or continuously learn will already also help, let's say, in applying for certain jobs. Okay, good. All right. I'm not sure if there was anything else. Otherwise, I would want to say thanks a lot for everyone to join. Thanks, Grégoire, for sharing your experience, and also Rosemée, thanks again for giving us the opportunity to share a bit of our perspective on the biomanufacturing facility of the future and the future of work.
Merci à vous aussi d'avoir témoigné et de partager vos expériences qui permettent de montrer que le secteur est lancé, je vais dire, dans cette transformation et est à la pointe également pour poursuivre et ancrer l'emploi ici en Wallonie, quoi. Voilà. Merci bien à tous et je vous souhaite une bonne journée. Au revoir.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.